The time to build is upon us.
With great power comes great responsibility.
You know the greatest danger facing us is ourselves, an irrational fear of the unknown.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
This is the Superhuman Academy podcast.
We're back in the Superhuman Academy studio with the amazing and talented John Graham. He was the 2018 USA Memory Champion. I'm sure he's a lot more than that, though. So we're going to dig into the rest of his life and what he's doing. I think he's got a lot to teach us. So, John, thanks for being here.
Yeah, appreciate it. And you forgot I'm the reigning champion too, 2022. So,
apologies. I actually didn't know it.
It's all good. Two-time, hoping to be third this year. So we'll see.
Excellent. I didn't notice. I was looking on the stats, and you're in like the top 5 for most of the discipline categories worldwide. I thought that was really cool. I did want to ask though, like I was looking you up and I was having trouble finding much biographical or historical information on you. I see you're on the internet everywhere, but it's kind of like the same little bio over and over again. It was hard to find more about your past, your life. So I'd love to just hear, more about your life story, what's going on now, what are you doing that is not easy to find on the internet.
I know. And that's something I'm trying to change too. I do have a website that I just published that really shares more.
Great.
Because I think that's where it really helps people is if you share the deep, dark secrets, because we're all human. I just published optimizeyourmind.co. That's more what I'm into is helping people uncover all the junk inside of them that's holding them back, because that was my story. So just real quick, obviously, I'm a memory champion. That's the glory. That's the big stuff. But behind the scenes, I was a really good student growing up, like an all-A student, but I was just a very anxious person. And I wasn't aware of that till I became an adult. In fact, if I would have talked to myself, a younger version of myself, like at 13, I would have been in denial. Like, what are you talking about? No, I'm sharp. I'm calm. Like, I wouldn't have even known what anxiety was, but growing up, struggled with anxiety, overwhelm, just like mentally overwhelmed where I'd shut down and just kind of freeze mode. You talk about like fight, flight, or freeze. I was the freeze. And it didn't happen all the time, but it happened. And what I'm sharing now is this really held me back when I became an adult and I started creative process, like building a business, wanting to train for memory championships. When I started going on my own, that's when it got in the way. That's when it just like capped me and just this stuff, struggled with it for years behind the scenes. And so that's what I'm all about now is like just helping people get through that stuff, because what's talked about in the mainstream these days is, you need to meditate, you need to take a cold shower, you need supplements, you need and all that stuff is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's like, it doesn't touch the root of those problems. So coming back to my story, I was a really sharp kid, obviously very bright. It helped me win these championships. And in winning these championships, it was all about asking the best in the world how to improve. And I know that's why everyone's here is like, soak up the knowledge of the people who've done it. Like if you want to be good at something, you just ask people who've done it. And that was my MO. Like the reason I'm top 5 in all these disciplines, like some of the disciplines is like, who's the best in words? How do I learn to memorize words specifically better? Who's the best in the world at names? Soak up their knowledge, befriend them. Who's the best in cards? Like that's what I did. I didn't really try to reinvent the wheel here. I applied it to what worked for me, but yeah. So grew up in a great family, grew up in a middle class small town in Michigan. I'm still back in Michigan. I came back, traveled the world at one point with my wife, sold everything I owned, backpacked around the world. Like that's a fun story too. Came back and started businesses. I think I failed at like 4 or 5 businesses, in my struggle that I talked about. It had nothing to do with the strategy. It had everything to do with me, like just me getting in the way. So we can talk about business, we can talk about memory, travel, everything. And my passion these days at the current moment is really helping people reach their fullest potential, because there's so much inside of us that we aren't even aware of. No one talks about. Like people just talk about meditate, try harder, do one thing at a time, block your calendar, all this stuff. And it's like, it's so superficial. It doesn't go to where we need to go as a society, as a human, to reach your fullest potential. So
what brought you back to Michigan? I talk to a lot of people and they tell me, when I ask them about their goals, their dreams, they mention things like wanting to travel the world, see places, just travel all the time. But when I talk to people who have actually done that, usually it's not something they do their whole life. Some people just travel forever. Most people don't, though. So for those who maybe have that aspiration, what brought you back to your hometown?
yeah. And two things come to mind when I think of this. Travel is amazing. And I think anyone who seeks travel is trying to, find their excitement. But what you learn is outside external stuff, travel, money, accomplishments have nothing to do with happiness. Like, you learn that the hard way. So like, travel was amazing, but I was still missing something and all of that. So the reason I came back home, very simply, is because I had 2 little girls and didn't have any family around. I was living out in Utah with my wife, and we grew up with close to family, and that was important to us. So this is post COVID, and we're like, let's just go back and raise the girls around family and friends. So that's as simple as it was for me.
Awesome. So tell me more about what's the real problem that isn't being addressed by things like cold showers, supplements, meditation, etc.
Oh man, how deep you want to go? So
as deep as you want to go, that'd be great.
Yeah. So let's think about this for a second. We've got anxieties. We're depressed. We're procrastinating. We're not taking action. Like, what's behind all that? It's not because you're dumb. That's not the problem. In fact, some of the most intelligent people struggle with this. It has nothing to do with your intelligence, your education. But what it has to do with is very simply trapped emotions. And some of you might be thinking, okay, what the heck does that mean? Like, I'm not an emotional person, right? You might be thinking, I'm not an emotional person. Oh, that's irrelevant. All of us in our lives go through events that bother us. As a kid, something bothers you and you can't process it. You literally hold it in because you can't process it. The event happens and you're so fixated on it, and the body is so entrenched in it that you can't handle it. You get yelled at as a kid, you get yelled at as an adult, and it bothers you so much that you hold on to it and you can't stay present with the moment, and it gets trapped in you because we don't learn how to handle emotions as human beings. We either push them away because they're so uncomfortable, right? That's what most people do. That's why we get on our phones, because we can't handle this moment. You can't handle the uncomfortability of this moment. You're bored, you're angry, you're whatever. You can't handle it, so you get on your phone. And there's no judgment to that, but that's what's happening. You can't handle the moment, the emotion, so you push it away. Can't deal with this, right? So over time, over our lives, emotions get suppressed. They literally trap in your body. So over a course of a lifetime, if you're gumming up and trapping these emotions in your body, you're blocking all this energy. Because imagine going through your day and all this stuff bothers you. Like, you're late, so all of a sudden you feel an instant worry. That bothers you. You go to make your coffee and you get a text or an email and you look at it and you don't want to read it. That bothers you. Someone cuts you off on your way to work. That bothers you. So all of your energy is being fixated on all stuff that bothers you. But that comes because an event happens in your life that pokes a trapped emotion, that causes the body biochemically to release these hormones again, because it's thinking, oh, it's reminding me of the same thing that bothered me when I was 7 years old, and it's happening again. And it causes a physiological reaction. And so over time, all this trapped stuff, some people use the word trauma. I don't like to use the word trauma because, to me, I never identified with that word. Trauma meant abuse and all this nasty stuff. No, trauma just means things bother you in your life. Little, big. You could have the most loving family, the most loving schooling, but stuff will still bother you. You will still be called names. You'll still feel guilty. You'll still trap anger. You'll still trap sadness. You'll still trap fear. So over a lifetime, this stuff gets trapped in all of us, and none of us know how to release it. It just comes up. And so when you don't feel a motivation or an energy or a zest or a drive, it's because all this stuff is in the way. It's literally jamming up all of your energy, all of your spiritual, emotional, mental energy. And so that is the deepest root of all of this stuff. Okay. That's why cold showers don't touch anything. That's why meditation doesn't touch. Meditation is great, by the way. And honestly, when you sit to try to meditate, many of you have tried it and you don't like it because your thoughts are crazy. And the moment you close your eyes, something worries you. You're fixated on something that worries you. That's because of a trapped emotion. Right? So all this stuff is in the way. So these trapped emotions cause thoughts, crazy thoughts, right? Think of like an emotion like a fire. When you're poked by something that bothers you, a fire starts. Anger, sadness, fear. And from that fire, all the smoke clouds your mind with thoughts, right? It's crazy. It's like a monkey mind. It's scatterbrain. So if all this stuff bothers you, little stuff bothers you, all of your attention gets fixated on these thoughts. You can't think clearly. You can't process today. You feel angry. You feel frustrated. All this stuff. It's because of a lifetime of just suppressing emotion, not knowing how to deal with that. So that's at the core of why we can't focus. It's the core of why we're procrastinating, why we are in anxiety, why we're depressed, is because we're all trapping and we're not handling events the way that they should be handled.
Okay, so if let's say I'm a coaching client, because you do coach people now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you coach through this type of work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So let's say I'm a coaching client and I buy into that hypothesis. How would I then go about identifying my own trapped emotions from my past, my day-to-day life? Because I'm guessing you can't just address generic trapped emotion. You probably have to address what's personal.
You gotta get real. Yeah.
So how would I identify that? How would I figure that out?
So that's the first shift is, they say face your fear. And people think that means like, oh, when I feel fear, I just got to battle it, right? No, it means literally face all the trapped stuff that you've been putting away, all the stuff that bothers you. Just like write it down. Go throughout your day, you guys. Keep a notepad in your pocket. And every single time you feel bothered by something, and let's be real, like it's going to be stupid stuff. But the more honest and brutally honest you can be, the better. So you're going to start your day and you're going to immediately notice right now something's bothering you. Something like, man, I really shouldn't be listening to this podcast. I really got to get stuff done. Like that bothered you. Write it down. Okay. John reminds me of my 7th grade teacher because he's bald and like that bothers me because that guy bothered me. Write it down. I'm serious because this stuff is what is in the way for you. Okay. Obviously there's big stuff in your life that happened, traumatic events or really nasty events, or there's people you don't like. That's the big stuff. We all know, you guys are all aware of that stuff. And I want you to face that stuff too. Right. But let's start jotting down every single thing that bothers you just to be aware of it. Because if you're not aware of it, it's just going to run your life. You're just going to be an autopilot. We know how strong that subconscious mind is. And those patterns in that programming, the way you correct it is to identify it. It means shine a light on it. You have to be aware of what bothers you in order to change it, in order to face it, in order to handle it differently. So that, I would say that's the first step. And it's going to, some of you guys are going to be mad at me now because now all of a sudden you're going to wake up from the matrix and you're going to notice all the stuff that bothers you. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, you're going to feel so, I'm a crazy person. I'm like, no. It's just because you're aware of it now. You were literally drifting through life, not aware of any of this stuff, not because you're stupid, but because you weren't aware of it. The fact that now that you're aware of all this stuff, now you can change it. Okay. And everyone has this, by the way. I don't care how wonderful of a person you are or smart you are. Everyone has stuff that bothers them. I still have stuff, but let it show up in your day. I don't think you need to go digging in your past yet. Just notice your day. Like something as simple as, one of you guys mentioned you got kids running around. I used to have my girl in my arm making coffee. And if she wanted something, like she'd point to something, an immediate frustration would come upon me. Like, why am I frustrated? She's this beautiful little girl, but I was so impatient. Like I got to get started on my day. That was running in my head. And a frustration came because, now I have to go make a snack for her, figure out what she wants. And I love her and I'm a smart guy, but it has nothing to do with that. Be honest with yourself. When something comes up, it's real. Why does that bother you? Right? Now we can have a real conversation.
Okay, so I'll be vulnerable. I'll get into this because I think it could be much more helpful to have real world examples. So one thing that bothers me, and it seems silly, it's like a pet peeve. I hate it when I'm writing. I do a lot of writing. I write all the time. I can't stand it when somebody is around in the proximity of potentially being able to read what I'm writing as I'm writing it. It's a random thing that bothers me. Like I don't like the idea that they could be reading it as I'm writing. I don't mind sharing things after they're finished, but in process, super irritating. Even if they're not doing anything. Like my wife could be sitting on the couch next to me, not paying attention when I'm doing it all, but if I'm writing, bothers me. Where do I go from there?
Okay. So what emotions come up?
It's kind of it's a sort of a defensiveness, I think, is what arises in me. It's
Yep.
It's some sort of like insecurity, I think. I don't know if I would define it. I don't know if I could define an exact emotion word for it, but those are the terms that come to mind when I think about it.
Well, there's one of three emotions behind any negative emotion. So like when I say negative, I don't mean bad. That's another shift. Get away from good and bad labels of emotions. Everything's valid. So behind any emotion is either sadness, anger, or fear. Any of the negative.
Definitely be fear out of those three, I think. Yeah.
So you're feeling fear. And so there's a belief that causes fear. Okay. I guess, man, we're going to go deep here.
Please, let's do it.
Sadness. So they all work together. Sadness is a belief that you're incomplete. You get sad when you believe something will complete you. When I get this done, when I get that outcome, when I get that paycheck, when I, whatever accomplish, whatever, I'm missing. It means you believe you're missing something. I'm not good enough right now as it is. So the moment something doesn't happen, you don't get what you feel will complete you, you feel sad. Do you hear what I'm saying here is the fact that you believe you're incomplete is what's causing sadness. There's a belief, like a mental belief. We're not talking about emotion here, just a belief. Because of that, if you believe that, you can fall into the trap of anger. Anger means you are only happy if you achieve an outcome. You are only happy if you accomplish that task, if you get that paycheck, that income, that new client, that achievement. Because if you don't get it, now you're angry, you're frustrated. Okay, so there's a belief that this outcome will make me happy. Okay, you following so far?
Mm-hmm. Is it
so
like
fear?
How about like, would you say that's like frustrated entitlement, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's more to this too. There's the belief in being right. Okay, that's why we get angry when we're debating someone. We have to be right. That's our outcome. Is to be right, to be just. So if life isn't fair, we get angry because we believe life has to be fair to make us happy. That's our outcome, is fairness, right? So if we're so attached to all these outcomes, I'm just exposing a lot of stuff for you guys. You're going to think of things differently now. If you're attached to this outcome that this has to be exactly the way I want it to, or life has to be fair, or this has to be fair, or this person has to treat me this way, you're going to get angry if it doesn't meet that. Okay. So now if you believe these two, notice they all support each other. Now fear comes in. Because fear is the belief in control, that either I'm losing control or I need control. Okay. Because again, it's fixated on that outcome. Now if I'm losing control, I'm going to grasp even harder. Right. So it causes fear, because if you feel you're going to lose something that you're so set on, then all of a sudden this worry kicks in. What if, like it just triggers all this stuff. So if you're feeling fear, it believes all these beliefs. You're incomplete in some way. You need that outcome in your way, the control.
Mm-hmm.
So the control is like, you want it your way. You want no one around. You don't want anyone to judge you, right? I mean, there's more to this. I think there's more to this, but we can dive into that. But those are the three beliefs. Okay. So if you don't believe you're incomplete, you can't fall for any of that stuff. It's really hard. That's where the ego comes in, right? The ego has all these beliefs. We can talk about the ego, but that starts with beliefs. Those are the beliefs of those emotions. Okay. Just like, I won't go any deeper because let's fixate on this example for a second, the defensiveness.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're sitting there, what are you afraid of? And if this person, what are you afraid of this person will do or know, or what will happen?
Yeah. I mean, thinking about it on my own, I've thought about it a decent amount, because it's one of those things which I haven't heard a lot of other people say that specific thing. It's like, that's kind of an interesting pet peeve. So I think for me, it has to do with wanting to appear competent and put together.
Yep.
And whenever you're writing, or whenever I'm writing something, when it's in process, it's not finished, right? It's not put together. It's not polished. And so I don't want people to see the process, because then they'd see, writing is very personal. It's a reflection of exactly what's going on in my head. So if they see my writing not complete, then basically what they're seeing is me not complete. So I think that gets back to your theory here.
Notice the very first belief, I'm incomplete. You don't believe you're competent right now. If you believe you are fully competent, it wouldn't bother you.
Yeah.
And I'm sharing that because we all know what he's talking about. I know what he's talking about. Right? I felt that too. So I'm not judging you, Colin, at all. Like, no, it's real. Okay. But it's because you believe, there's a belief that I'm not competent. So I need to put myself out there to show everyone outcome that I'm competent and write this book. And if it doesn't happen in the way I want, where no one's around and I can be free to write, if someone's watching me, that's the control part. You want it your way. So that's the breakdown of the beliefs. Okay. But behind all that, if we're talking about trapped emotion, there are events in your life that have happened that caused you to be afraid because you're afraid someone might judge you. You've been judged in the past for your competency. You've been challenged or felt that way, whether it was real or not. And that event scarred you in a way. I wouldn't say scar you, but it trapped an emotion. You're holding on to that inside of you.
Yep.
So that's the root, is like, okay, where's that come from? So were there events in your life? Now we're getting real deep.
Yeah, that's okay. Open book. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I think the things that come to mind for me, and I've given this some thought too. So I'm the youngest of three. So I think I have a little bit of that little brother syndrome. Like, want to prove myself. It's kind of like little man, inferiority complex sort of deal. Got to puff up the chest. Got to make yourself bigger than you are, from being the youngest in a family. So I think that's some of the context of where it starts for me. And also in school, I definitely felt trapped in school, and I felt condescended to. Because when you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom, and you're like, I don't need to do this. I can just get up. I can speak my mind. So I think I definitely developed a pretty strong chip on my shoulder all throughout childhood and school, feeling like people were always treating me as younger and smaller than I wanted to be. So there were a lot of instances there, not just one.
You got a lot of shit inside of you, don't you? We all do. Sorry for the language, but just want to be real with you guys, you know. So a couple things. We're probably not going to find the event that caused all this, and I don't want you guys ever to get fixated on that, because honestly, you'll never know. Probably. That's not the point here. Okay. There's a couple ways to go about this. And there's a lot of different ways, actually. The biggest way is forgiveness. Okay. Forgiveness isn't what I thought it was. Because, like, think about this, guys. If you have all this trapped emotion inside of you, it's trapped, it's in your body, it's linked to your nervous system biochemically. That's why you feel pain in your gut when you're having anxiety, or like in your heart. Like, it's physiologically attached spiritually, if you believe in that stuff. Like, it's real. If you believe you're holding on to this poison and it's trapping you, why wouldn't you forgive? Because forgiveness means you're letting it go. It has nothing to do with the other person. It means, like, you want to just get this junk out of you. Okay. And so there's going to be key moments that pop up. Like, if you get quiet, Colin, like you said, and you like think about this for a second, just let it come to you. Like, don't be in your head. Oh man, this teacher really scolded me all the time. Boom. Okay. Let's grab onto that. The way you forgive is you have to look at the event from a different perspective. Because this event is inside of you. It's causing a negative charge, a negative emotion. That's why it's causing it. You have to disarm that charge. So you have to look at this event in a completely new lens. And you're not going to like this. You're not going to want to do this. You're going to hate doing this, by the way, but it's necessary. That's why no one does it. Again, suppression. See, notice the pattern. We're avoiding pain. You got to face it. So you got to look at this event from an innocent standpoint. Try to understand why this teacher would scold you or treat you this way. Why would someone do that? And all of a sudden, from this understanding, you're like, wow, she probably had a really tough upbringing in a family. Wow. Like, she learned this from her parents. She learned this from her teacher. She learned this from this. She's also flawed too, like me. Like, all of a sudden, you're just going to have your perception of the world is going to expand. That's how you become a fuller person, is you don't see things from this view anymore. You're like, oh my gosh, I see perspective. I see people's perspective. I see other sides. It doesn't mean I agree with it. This is not right or wrong. This is not I agree with it. Don't ever feel like you have to agree with a person. No. I'm talking about just see the perspective from a different lens. Just try your best to have a compassion. Why would this happen? Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe whatever. Maybe, just see it. Put yourself in their shoes. And all of a sudden, you're going to see it from a different perspective. And you're going to be able to forgive it. Okay? I mean, I go deeper into this for forgiveness for anyone, for cord cutting. But you have to have a willingness to do this, and you have to mean it. It can be as simple as, I understand why this happened. I forgive you. I cut the cord and I let you go. Like, I understand the lesson. There's always a lesson for you guys to learn in all of these piles of crap of your life. Okay. There's a pearl in it. Imagine a pile of crap and you're digging around and you find a pearl and you clean it off, wash it off. There's a pearl of wisdom in all of these events. And it will continue to bother you and affect you in your day-to-day when you're riding and have someone around your shoulder, until you find the pearl and integrate that pearl into your life, integrate that lesson. Okay. So I would ask you, find the lesson. What's a different meaning, or what is this event trying to teach you to give you a deeper understanding of life or understanding about yourself?
So when you say that, are you referring to, so obviously this for me is attached to probably lots of things. You're saying let specific events rise to the surface, which I had a couple come to mind.
Good.
And then the wisdom, the pearl, you're talking about coming from each specific event that comes to mind. So each one, it could be slightly different, right? Or there might be one big pearl.
One big pearl, yeah, same
The pilot
pattern.
grab, or there are different facets of the same thing, I'm sure. So you mentioned going deeper, something about cord cutting. Can you explain that a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, cord cutting just means like forgive. You let go of letting it bother you. You forgive. I mean, it's a different way to think about it.
Okay. I
Cord
wasn't sure if
cut,
you had a
forgive. It just means like you're.
visualization practice there or something.
Well, I cord cut every day. Like every time I have a conversation with someone, I cut the cord on it. I mean, it means I let them go. I bless them. I love them. I'm like, okay, I wish you the best. Whether it was amazing conversation or like whatever, because I don't want that energy on me anymore. I don't want it gumming me up. So that's a practice I just get.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a process for the specific? So I've got a specific event in mind. I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, let's go into it.
Yeah. Okay. So I had this one teacher. I think it was 7th grade, I want to say, which of course is already a turbulent time. That's like puberty zone. Not fun, but and she would have us. So we had these agendas, which so I'm thinking of this now. I hated writing anything down at all where people could see it, even throughout my schooling. So in math class, I hated to show my work because again, that's like, I didn't want people to see my process. I just wanted them to see the finished product.
Yeah. Yep.
And I could do math in my head pretty well most of the time, so I didn't want to show my work. But anyway, and this was not math class, but we had these agendas that we were given at school where we were supposed to be able to write down our homework and things like that. So I never wanted to do that either. Mine was always empty. I would never use it. But I had one teacher that forced us to bring it to class. So you have to bring your little agenda. And even if there was no homework, she would have us write down no homework, and she'd have us write it down in this goofy way that really bothered me and made me feel like a child. So I didn't like that. And then she'd come around and check it, and she would give us points if we had written it down or not. And I was so resistant to this that I would literally just let myself lose points in this class because I wouldn't write down the words like no homework basically in my agenda. And so I had this teacher who would basically point me out in the middle of the class over and over and over again for not bringing it and writing this thing down. And I had so much resentment about that. So there's a specific example.
Okay. Something came up for me that's really going to expose this for you guys. Make it easier. I like to make simple. The world, other people are a mirror. So when you look at something and it bothers you, it means that thing is inside of you, that same trait. So let me very simply expose this for you, Colin. And again, I give you no judgment here because I've been through this. You were judging her for her style. It bothered you.
Yep.
Right? Very much. And so the same thing is happening when you're writing your thing and someone's behind you. You're afraid they're judging you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So because we judge other people, we're afraid of judgment ourselves. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're angry at someone, it's because you have that same trait in you that you do too. Right? That's kind of
it's we all contain the whole of the human condition. I forget who said something like that more eloquently, but it's a part that's not been properly integrated.
And so the lesson here, if you're looking at this, notice and just be honest, you judged her.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
her style. Yeah, very much. So I want you to sit with that and just try to understand her, not from a judgment, the opposite of judgment is curiosity. Mm-hmm. You can't be judging if you're curious. So if you get curious and you look at her from a completely different lens than you've ever looked at her before, probably from the lens you know now, because you're a smarter, wiser person now than you were in 7th grade when you were a little dipshit.
I sure hope so.
Just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like, so look at that without judgment, but curiosity. Why was she doing it that way? Why did she make me write in a goofy thing? Why? And you'll get answers. It doesn't make it right or wrong. Get away from right or wrong. Get away from I agree with her or not. It's irrelevant. Just try to understand that perspective. And from that perspective, if you understand, you open up a door. Go ahead. I heard.
Yeah, sorry, I don't usually talk, but this is kind of in my wheelhouse. Psych is my thing.
Right.
So Colin, utilizing your specific example, you understand that her job as a teacher was to teach the whole class, right?
Yep.
Okay. And you can understand her reasoning in making people write in their agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Because she has a whole class. Everybody is different. Everybody learns in their own way. However, some people would be resistant to writing it down for other reasons, like, I don't want to do it. She's trying to get rid of the excuse. So when you look at it from, she's coming from a place of love and cherishing and just trying to do her job, it really does help you let go of it being targeted to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Luke,
and I think
the person.
I think that's what John was trying to say. And shifting that perspective, it helps you come at every situation from a different angle. And when you're trying to help people by trying to figure out where they're coming from, it helps yourself. That's the mirror thing.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to come up with different perspectives here in their own right, and it just expands you. It's like Luther, he's expanding your vision of, oh wow, she's just a teacher. She's got 30 kids in 37th graders. Can you imagine the difficulty of that? But anyway, it just expands you. The lesson, the pearl here in this pile of crap is learning to transcend judgment. It's very hard because we all naturally kind of judge. The world is full of judgment. Okay. But how can you view people differently? Because if you don't judge others, you won't feel judged. It's amazing. That's the flip of it. If you don't hate others, you won't feel hated. So that's the big pearl here is you're judging other people. We all do it. We've all done it. We still do it. But if you stop judging and you have a perspective of all these people, all these instances, you won't judge it. Doesn't mean you agree with it. Okay. I disagree with what she did, but I still see her perspective. You don't judge it and you won't feel judged. The person over your shoulder, you care less if you heal these parts of you.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I was pondering the other day, and I think this goes with what you're saying, is that we necessarily build the foundations for our own model of the world, our psychological model. We necessarily build the foundations for those before we're prepared to do anything like that in an effective way, right? Because we have to lay the groundwork when we're young. And that's when we're the least equipped to do that sort of thing. And so necessarily, as we get older, it's like there's a lot of foundation that's cracked and was poorly built when we were children. And I think everyone has to address that in some way. It's like the foundation's there. It's probably poorly built unless you were probably. I don't think there's really any.
And you don't even build it. That's the thing. It was just unconsciously thrown at you.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're 7, before you're 7, like from up to 7 years old, you're in a theta state, brainwave, which means that's like the lower frequency brainwave that matches like hypnotic suggestion. So you're under hypnosis basically from 0 to 7 in a way. Like you're not, a dummy, but like your brainwave is receptive. It's a sponge. It's soaking in suggestion. So your whole world is built on the way your parents handle things, do things, view the world, your teachers, society. It just gets sucked in. So your belief system isn't really built consciously. Yeah. It's just built for you. And then when you become an adult, all this stuff gets in the way and forces you to do two things: change your belief, but also handle the emotion and disarm that charge and see it differently.
Yeah. And so the initial suggestion of writing things down as you notice they bother you throughout the day, I see that as being a very accessible way to start to tap into those things that are hard to see. They're not obvious. They're pretty deep, but that's like where they poke through. That's where they shine through in the mundane. So when I'm annoyed that somebody's over my shoulder when I'm writing, that's a clue to me. There's something down there. There's some reason for that. And so it gives me a rope to tug on, to start to pull, to find it. But yeah, because I think it's really difficult if you just ask somebody, what are the flaws in your fundamental beliefs about the world? That's not something they're likely to be able to just articulate on the spot. But what bothers you throughout the day, that's something that everyone can.
Yeah. The way to change, guys, is through the specific.
Yeah.
Not the general. Like, so that was a great example. What's your belief system? What's your biggest limiting belief? It's like, it's a general question. Like, just face the specifics of your day that are in the way, and you're going to free up. Yeah. This is great. I just had to point that out.
Yeah.
Because we're all different.
So, man, well, how we've gone through a lot of time really fast here. So, well, I mentioned as the title of this, I always title these things before we actually have the conversation. So I have no idea if the title is going to fit super well. But I did want to ask, like, how does this deep work, because I know it does, how does it connect to the things that people are typically trying to get when they're doing things like meditating, taking cold showers, and I'm blurry, sorry about that, I'll fix that. Supplementation, people are trying to get an edge. How does this deep work relate to getting the edge?
It is the edge. Yeah. Imagine, I mean, there's so many things that come to my mind. Like, you guys, talk about memory techniques for a second. I want to give you a stupid, funny example just to expose this. Blueberries help with memory, right? There's some article out there. It tells you, Jim Quick talks about like dark chocolate, walnuts. Okay, that's great. Can you imagine training for a memory competition and all you did was eat blueberries? And that was your strategy. It would do nothing. It would move the needle 0.001%. That's what a supplement will do if you have deep trapped emotions. A supplement will do nothing. The big needle mover in a memory competition is learning spaced repetition, learning memory techniques, learning massive shifts that will move the needle tremendously. So the same thing is here for the deep work is the needle mover that will go like this. Whereas the supplements, the cold shower will just go ooh, I had a cold shower today and it felt amazing for 30 minutes. Okay, cool. It has some effects. But underneath all of that, there's still a massive thing in the way. So you can't get anywhere in life if you just got these massive boulders in your way that are paralyzing you, that are causing all this anger and fear and all this stuff. So to me, the deep work is like the massive, guys, there's my daughter screaming in the background. I don't know if you hear it, but there's so much potential inside of you that is masked and covered up by all this trapped emotion. You guys don't even realize, like, people like, how do I get more confident? How do I speak more honestly? If you remove this stuff, it just activates in you. You don't have to do anything sometimes. You don't have to try to be confident. You don't have to read a swag book and dress like that. Helps. That's a small blueberry thing. But it's like the stuff inside of you is like, boom. If you get rid of all this fear and all the stuff that bothers you, like if you do this for a month, if you sat down and wrote everything that bothered you, forgave it, looked for the pearl in the pile of crap, and integrated it, meaning you woke up that day and tried to apply those to your life, all of a sudden this confidence is activated you. All of a sudden this heart is activated you. All of a sudden this authenticity is activated in you just by removing stuff. We think adding stuff to our day is going to maximize us. No, it's a matter of reduction and ripping stuff out and letting us, because like we're all like, imagine you're tethered to an anchor and you're sinking, but you think like adding more floaties will help you in life. No, just let go and you'll float to the top. So to me, the supplements, stuff like that is great, but like it's not going to make lasting change. And it's not going to really affect what you really want to do. It sounds cool and it's great. Like, I'm not saying any of this is wrong. If you do supplements, do supplements. I take omega-3, but I'm saying, like, don't take lion's mane expecting to all of a sudden be bulletproof in your mind or anything like that. Don't do cold showers expecting it to change your life, like to get rid of all this stuff. Because again, you're avoiding the stuff that's really in the way.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, like you mentioned at the beginning of the call, training for different disciplines in memory, you go to the people who are best in those categories.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that advice is misapplied, like going to the people who are the best at something to learn from them. And I totally get where you're coming from, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think people hear that, and then so they listen to podcasts and things where you've got, you know, experts on whatever topic. You've got extreme sports athletes. You've got all these people who are at the, you know, top 0.001% of any given discipline. And sometimes the problem with listening to those people is that what they're talking about is so far removed from what the average person needs to do, like the cold shower sort of thing. It's like, yeah, if you already have done the deep work and you've come all this way and you're looking for that extra, you know, 1%, 2% or less to get an extra little edge over your other competitors who are at the same level as you, who have been doing all of the hard work that everybody needs to do. Yeah, that might make a slight difference, but for the average person who hasn't done the years of training, hasn't been in the gym, hasn't done the deep, you know, emotional, psychological work, like you said, it's blueberries. And so, yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, because when I first got into learning the memory and learning techniques, for me, it was perfect. It was perfectly applicable to my situation because that was a specific roadblock for me. But for so many people, and memory and learning is a little more universal than a lot of other things, but I often use the analogy of bottlenecks. I come from a manufacturing background, and if you make an improvement somewhere that isn't your bottleneck, you won't see a net improvement in your results at all. So if you improve something that's not your actual fundamental problem, the results will be negligible. If you improve at the bottleneck, the area that is actually your fundamental problem, then you'll see this massive change. That's where all the results will come from. So I think what you're talking about here today is incredibly important. I labeled this conversation, I think, supercharge your processing speed or something like that, which to me, the processing speed, it comes from fixing all of the things that are, it's not about increasing your speed so much as it is about removing the things that are holding you back. Is that how you would describe that as well?
Yeah, the bottleneck's great. Like, everyone knows the one thing that's in the way that's bothering them, that they're uncomfortable with, that they want to avoid, right? The reason we go to apps and cold showers and supplements is because it's the easier. Like, we've all done it. I've done it. You know, it's don't make it wrong that you're doing these things. In fact, some of them have great benefits. But yeah, if you're facing the bottleneck or the biggest stuff that bothers you, that's where you're going to get the biggest change. And like, we're speaking very generally here because everyone has different bottlenecks and areas in their life. But I mean, that's all I have to say about that. Is like, yes, let's just get very real with yourself and face the things that are uncomfortable, the bottlenecks, the big problems, and then the big change happens.
Yeah, it's Joseph Campbell's Enter the Forest at the Darkest Point. That's where your road starts, right? That's where your adventure starts. Nobody wants to go to that spot in the forest because it's the scariest, it's the darkest, but
people equate darkness with bad. It's not bad.
Yeah.
You need to integrate those parts of you. You have to. Life is going to keep slamming you, punching you in the gut until you do. That's the mirror. If you feel like you're stuck in a loop of life or trapped or whatever, it's because you haven't learned the lesson yet. Like a video game, you haven't learned the lesson. You're still in that loop. And I'm serious. Like, you're still judging. If you're still afraid, if you're still something, it's going to keep happening over and over until you transcend that. And so if you're stuck, and we all get stuck at levels, there's levels. You keep going up. But face what's trapping you, right? Let's face that. Let's learn the lesson. Just get real. Let's learn that lesson. If y'all will sit for 10 minutes tonight in complete silence and ask and just get curious, it will come to you. But no one does that. I'm not saying you need to meditate, just like get quiet and ask. Get curious. What's in the way? What do I need to learn? What's the biggest thing? And it will show up. Like the first thing that comes up, the thing that you want to push away is probably the thing you need to resolve. The thing with your mom, the thing with your brother, the thing with your, like, it sounds weird. Like, how does resolving my brother help me with my memory or with my business? No, that's it. Face that, resolve that with love, with forgiveness, with whatever. You need the lesson. And life becomes lighter. Imagine that checklist of all the stuff that bothers you. Imagine if nothing bothered you. All of your bandwidth and mental energy and focus and clarity and emotion would be poured into what you want to do. You'd have so much. You wouldn't be drained. The reason you're drained is because of all this stuff that's inward focusing. So
I've learned from my own, coaching a lot of people with their memory. When I first started coaching, I basically was just teaching memory techniques. And I was confused why that wasn't working. Like sometimes it would work, but a lot of times it wouldn't really go anywhere. And I was really frustrated by that. Because I was like, hey, this worked for me, it changed my life. So, but what I realized is, it doesn't really matter how many techniques you have if you don't pay attention in the first place. Like you're not going to remember something if you don't pay attention to it. Names and faces is a really common example. Like if you meet somebody, they say their name and you pay no attention to what they say, you're not going to remember their name. And it's not because you have a bad memory, it's because you weren't paying attention. But to go back to your point about, it's like address that thing with your brother and all of a sudden your memory will magically get better. It's like, well, if 90% of your mental energy is being spent like trying to hold back, suppress, deal with all these problems that are deep in your psyche, that means you've got 10% left to pay attention to what's actually going on, to try to remember that person's name. It's gonna be a lot harder. So it's really not that much of a stretch at all. It's like, yeah, if you're spending so much energy on all those things inside, I don't care if you learn how to do a memory palace, you're not going to remember things because you won't have the bandwidth to pay attention in the first place. You won't have the mental energy to do that visualization, and you won't want to either. Your brain is going to resist it. It's like, you've got a lot of stuff to deal with. Why are you playing around with this random memory technique? It's going to keep pulling you back. And
that's the ego. That's the voice in your head that's been conditioned over a lifetime that will pull you away. Right.
Yeah. So tell me more. So I've got the idea of how we start the work. We pay attention to things that bother us. Writing them down is probably helpful. As much as I might resist it, I should probably write them down, even if someone's looking over my shoulder. Writing things down, not digging into, but allowing specific events from the past to come up associated with that and thinking about them, adopting whenever other people are involved, adopting their perspective, trying to see it and remove the judgment there, look for the wisdom. What's the pearl? What's next?
Love it. You gotta, how would love handle that situation? And love doesn't mean like you hug it, you kiss it, you be kind to it. Sometimes love's tough. But the only way to integrate these parts of you is if you love them, if you embrace them, the shadows, the judgments, the moments that hurt you in life. It's very hard to do for people. But imagine, and I just did this the other day, imagine loving the person that you hated the most in your whole life. I did that just the other week and it felt liberating. Just let it go. But that's how you fully integrate. You ask yourself, how would love handle this situation? And your own answer will come up. And then you do that thing. It doesn't mean you call them. Like, you can forgive without being in front of someone. And please do. Just forgive them from a distance. Let them go, have a conversation, let it go. And sometimes it'll take a couple times. Sometimes the person you need to forgive is you, by the way. because you keep beating yourself up over something you did years ago or feel guilty, right? You have to let that go. It's holding you back so much. So I would just say, keep it simple. Love's always the answer. You guys, we get so, and I'll share this very vulnerably. You guys probably understand this because you're in this group. We're very intellectual. We want to improve our minds. We want to improve our learning. We're very much in our head. The head is great and the head will get you places. And I learned this the hard way. The head kept me in anxiety, in overwhelm, in overthinking, in analysis paralysis. But when I started doing this process, I started tapping into my heart. Not just like the beating physical heart, but you guys, some of you understand what I'm talking about here. You have to have a balance between the two. Okay? You can't operate your whole life in your head. Your head is very powerful, but your heart is more powerful. Because people will feel you. You guys feel what I'm talking about right now? You don't like, oh, yeah, John, like, you feel me, what I'm saying to you, the profoundness of all of this. So that's heart. Okay, so you have to start unlocking your heart. This process is going to start activating your heart. When you activate your heart, you stay in the present moment. Things don't bother you. And your heart is very sensitive, by the way. That's why we trap emotions. Think about this. Because Colin, when he's sitting there, he's judging that woman, and all of a sudden his attention gets poured out of himself, fixated on this woman, and anger shows up. And his heart shuts off, closes up. And then we do this over our lifetime when we operate mostly in our head, right? And our heart gets closed off. Our heart, we protect ourselves from judgment. The reason you're sitting there writing and worried about someone over your shoulder, like you're literally putting a barrier up. You're blocking, like don't hurt my heart. Don't judge me. Don't say something that's going to hurt me. That's really what's happening. Okay? So we have to open our hearts back up because they've been shut off. They've been hurt throughout our whole life. And I know some of you guys are like shaking your head like, John, this is silly, but it's not. It's real. This is real. Like I'm 37 and if you would have told me this stuff that I'm sharing now, like 5 years ago, I would have laughed. Clicked off. It probably would have bothered me, ironically. This is the answer. Okay. You guys are all smart. This isn't the problem. Okay. It's just the problem is you're using too much of this and not enough of this. There's a guidance here that we're missing. Okay. There's a connection here. There's an intelligence that's 10 times more powerful than this. When you activate this, you're confident. You speak truth. You don't worry about stuff. I'm not worried about what any of you guys say or think right now because it's not that I don't care. It's that I know the truth here about certain things, or my truth at least, and I want to share it. And I don't care. And I want to help people. That's here. I'm not up here anymore. I don't have a notebook that I'm like jotting down notes and sharing with you guys bullet by bullet here, this process. I'm just here. You feel me? So we need to activate this part of us because the world is shifting right now. Some of you guys are noticing this. The world is changing. It's very volatile right now. There's a mass triggering going on of all the stuff that we're holding inside of us. So the best way to handle that and to shift into this new world is to like start activating these parts of you that you've held off your entire life, that you're blocking.
Well, I've got one more question that I ask everyone who comes into this call. And then I'd like to open it up. I mean, it's already open anyway, but if anyone's had questions that they've been holding back, I'd love to hear those. So start thinking of those. And if you don't want to read them out loud on the call, you can put them in the chat. I'm happy to read them. But my question is, how would you define or what does it mean to be superhuman? What does it mean to be human? Are those different things? How would you define those terms?
Superhuman, going with this theme now, every single person has a completely unique gift to the world, completely unique. The only way to be superhuman is to get rid of all the stuff that's in the way. So everyone has a superhero inside of them right now that needs to be activated for the world to improve for other people. And so this process I'm laying out for you is the way to activate the superhero in you, the voice inside of you that is wanting to get out, but you're afraid, right? The intelligence is ready. So all this stuff that's in the way will activate your superhero layer by layer. So the superhero is the best version of you, the highest potential. The only way to reach your highest potential is to do this type of work and to give your gifts and to make mistakes and to like all this stuff that I'm sharing with you. So that's the superhero, this version of you that is the best optimal released version, if that makes sense. And what does it mean to be human? It's a great question. It means, I guess what comes to me is just embrace the truth of who you are right now. Look in the mirror and just be honest with yourself. Not in a beating up good or bad way, but like you're human. Right? You all have flaws. And like use these flaws for good, guys. The anxiety I went through, the procrastination, the overwhelm, the analysis paralysis, the mental paralysis that I went through, the panic attacks, that's a gift. It gave me the superpower to share this with you now, to help people come through that. And so all the stuff you guys are flaws in yourself, stuff you don't like about yourself, those are the gifts, those are the gems that make you human. You have to transmute those into your superpower. You have to find the gifts, the pearls in that stuff. Because everything, the moment you love who you are right now, in the moment you are at, and everything that comes with that is the moment you can start your journey. Because you can take all the crap and turn it into gems. You hear me?
I hear you. Others on the call, does anybody have a question or comment, anything to share? I see Bill and Luther are the only ones on video right now. If either of you have something, I'd love to hear from you. If anyone off camera has anything, feel free to come on camera or drop it in the chat.
I just I wanted to share you John, you were talking about processing things, and Colin, I think I kind of went through a lot of what you went through, and I was given this book. A lot of people nicknamed it the Codependence Bible, but it's the Adult Children of Alcoholics. And I have a lot of friends who are psychiatrists. I had a lot of issues as a kid. And just like John said, I used my flaws. I had blackout rages as a child, and I used meditation to give myself self-discipline a lot. But that was disconnecting me. And it wasn't until I was processing through the issues that I saw it. But as I grew older, I noticed that there was more and more things that I would do that other people wouldn't. And psychiatrists couldn't tell me, but this, it helps you process through it. And John, very early on, you were talking about how you look at things and it's like you can't quite reach it. Things that happened when you were a kid that when you fully develop, you're supposed to be able to process and turn into a good thing. And this talks about that adult, the child inside, you as an adult, and you don't get those tools. And it's been around for a long time. And it wasn't until I picked up that book that I found out how to actual process. And it is through sharing with others that you can really point it out. So Colin, I would definitely journal. Maybe I did like a time thing. So I would try to plot points and overanalyze plot points of when I would get more agitated, less agitated, and just write a little cliff note on what caused that and what would work that. But it really helps both with memorization to not disconnect, but to integrate all the negative things that you get worked up. It becomes a block. You can use those blocks to help you perform better. And I've worked in the prison system at Supermax, mental health restrictive housing. I've worked at psychiatric hospitals. And it's because of the issues that I had as a child that I've never met somebody I couldn't out crazy, is what I call it. The Marines, I didn't get a chance to serve, but Marines, they're taught the OODA loop. I use that, and getting people to just realign in conversations to de-escalate. Everything that you're born with gives you a talent, and connecting it and using emotional intelligence to connect both your heart and mind does help. I just need work on the techniques right now.
No, thanks for sharing, Luther. Like, the vulnerability of what you shared too is really, I don't like the word vulnerable because it means it has a connotation of weakness, but it's authentic, right? It's real what he's sharing. And this is a process, guys. I laid out a piece, I go deeper with my clients to really just blow through all this stuff very quickly. I shouldn't say very quickly, but very profoundly. Because when I talk about overwhelm, what does that even mean? It's a cocktail of emotions that paralyzes you. Fear, anger, sadness, there's so much. And, Luther, there was so much pent up inside of him because of what he went through as a kid. We all have that. We all have that. Whether you believe it or not. It doesn't mean your parents were wrong, your society was wrong, but we all go through that. All do. Right? So I love that you shared that. So the process is learning how to I teach how to learn how to handle it now, the moment it's happening. What do you do? How do you integrate that later? How do you let go of it for good, like forever? Not just for today, not just to manage it. Like, you can let go of this stuff forever. Because just real quick, my grandfather committed suicide last year. And it brought up an intense amount of anger towards him and the situation. Not just sadness. There was rage, Luther talked about it. Rage that came up for me that I didn't know it was in there. It's gone. Because I went through this process. I still don't agree with what he did, but I love him. And all of that rage and anger left me. Every memory, I can think of every memory that raged me, there's no sizzle anymore. That's when you know that this is working. When stuff doesn't bother you anymore that did. There's no sizzle. You can think of some of the worst memories of your life or these moments, and there's no sizzle anymore. And imagine the effect that has. So when you're sitting and you're trying to memorize or read a book or whatever you're trying to do in life, if there's no sizzle, stuff bothering you, imagine how much focus and energy and drive you have into that. Imagine that.
Well, we have John for another few minutes. If anyone has any other thoughts or questions, now's the time.
I'll just mention too, while you guys are thinking this, I think Colin will probably post the websites. I'll post them in the chat. I have a training I did for entrepreneurs at optimizemymind.com. It's a free training on peak performance. And then I also have my website, optimizeyourmind.co. There's a masterclass there. And it's not .com, optimizeyourmind.co. That's my main website. So feel free to jump on the email list, follow for more. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're really trying to achieve something in life, let's have a conversation, because there's so much potential in you guys. Cold showers ain't cutting it. Cold showers, by the way, are great for triggering the parasympathetic nervous system. That's why people do it. It helps regulate the stress in your body. It's good, but it doesn't address the root cause, right? So imagine like coming home every day and watching Netflix to de-stress. That's basically what you're doing with the cold showers. You're just calming your nervous system instead of dealing with the real thing that's causing the stress. You hear what I'm saying? But that cold showers trigger the calming, rest, restore in your body, that response. So it's good, but it's not an end all be all. So if you want to go deeper, try some of these things today. Realize how much bothers you. Realize how much work you got and how many boulders are in the way, but be excited because that's the work. Yeah, I'd love to answer any questions. If I left people just stunned and introspective. Sometimes that happens. That just people just get really introspective and start realizing, this opens up doors. And that's the reason I'm here, guys, is to just open up doors for you guys and just seeing things differently. So that's how you expand. Because I hope I challenged some of you guys too. I hope this was uncomfortable in a good way. I really do.
I have a question that I use cold showers in a different way. I don't know, but okay, so with meditation and stuff, there's visualization that you can utilize to help target things. But taking a cold shower while doing like a visualization of the cold water washing through your entire being, would that help you isolate hot spots throughout your day?
Hot spots throughout your day. What do you mean?
Well, like, so if you're utilizing the visualization, like say, for example, a cold waterfall washing away the stress, where you would feel the resistance that would help isolate your hot spots or where you got stress throughout the day so that you could help work through those as well.
Sure. Let's just keep this really simple. Yes. Like, if you guys go to meditate and you close your eyes, the first thing that comes to your mind is what you need to face: the stress. The moment you close your eyes, you'll think of something you got to do tomorrow or something about it, or a stressor will come up. I guarantee it. Same thing with the visualization. If you're trying to do your visualization in the shower, the cold shower, and you're washing over and something keeps pulling your attention away, that's it. That's it. You know what I mean? So that's why the list is important. Is literally you will go about your day. 5 minutes from now, I guarantee you guys will end the call. You'll go to do something and something will bother you. There will be some uncomfortability about something. It's right there. It's right there for all you guys.
Well, since we're here, one question I have, this is for everybody. Feel free to get prepared to write a quick response in the chat. I'd love to get a response from more than just just Luther, though. Luther, I super appreciate you sharing. It's been awesome. So something that I'd like to do with Superhuman, I'd like to make this type of community conversation more accessible. And one thing I'd really like to do is to build a space where this kind of conversation is happening all the time, where people can access this. They can talk to other people all around the world, share their superhuman insights and abilities with other people, and to have amazing people like John come in frequently to share and even provide guidance on. So maybe even just really mini courses on like one thing, because oftentimes I know from teaching courses and coaching, things like, hey, we've got a 12-week program can often be very intimidating to start with. But something like, hey, we're going to learn one thing over the course of 1 week can be a lot more accessible. So just real quick, if you can, in the chat, if you're listening to this, if that's something that you think you'd be interested in, just drop a yes in there. This is not committing to anything. I'm just trying to get some immediate feedback from people in our community. Bill says yes.
Yeah, I say yes.
John says yes. That's important. That's great. Luther says yes, and everybody else is hiding off camera. I'm assuming they're probably driving and doing other things. But all right, well, we got a very small sample size there. Okay, someone else said yes who hasn't been on camera. That's great. Okay, so small sample size, but I do think that there's a hunger for more community in our very divided world.
It's almost mandatory at this point. The world is so noisy, and if you really want to improve your life, you have to have someone or people in your ear all the time who are helping you get you to where you want to go. You have to. Because it's so easy to take a 1-hour course somewhere or whatever, and then the rest of your day, 23 hours, it's like distraction or people in your life who don't support you or whatever. You have to absorb yourself in that. We all know the rule of like 5, like the 5 people you surround yourself with. A group like this or a mentor can be that 5, right? So if you guys are wanting something big in your life, like go all in and surround yourself with someone or people like a group like that who will keep you on that, not just for accountability's sake, but just to have that in your ear all the time, right? So that shiny objects don't take you away. The next shiny podcast or the next shiny thing or the next book or whatever, just stay intentional on what you really want. And like a group like that will be very valuable.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot because one thing that, Superhuman has had in the past, we've had asynchronous courses, which, that was super powerful to me. That's why I got into this community in the first place, was I took a course and it changed my life. We also have a Facebook group, but there's a lot of problems inherent with Facebook groups. So I won't bother listing them, but one thing I feel like, and I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts. I listened to the Superhuman podcast with Jonathan for a long time before it kind of taken over. And the one problem I've always felt is just everything's at a distance, right? So like when I'm listening to a podcast, it's like, this is really cool to be able to listen to these amazing people, but I don't get to talk to them. I don't get their feedback. They're not in the room with me, even though it kind of feels like it sometimes. And when I'm taking a course online, it's asynchronous. It's like, this is a really great course, but I can't talk to the instructor. I can't talk to the other students very easily. Maybe there's a question form. I could send an email, something like that, but it still feels at a distance. Even in a Facebook group, it's like, all right, we've got 35,000 people currently in our Facebook group. How many people are actually interacting with those other people in the group? Probably not very many. And when people are on Facebook, they're doing lots of other things other than trying to interact in a community. So that's something I feel like is there's not enough of that. And I'd like to bring more of that into our world. And so if, people on this call right now or people who watch this later, if that's something you're interested in, that's what I'm trying to move towards. And so if that's something that you want to, I'd love to get more feedback on that. So if that's something you care about, ping me. I've got my email at Colin@Superhuman Academy. I'm a slow typer. .com. You can email me there, but pretty soon, hopefully, you'll be able to interact a lot more personally rather than email. You can jump on these calls, talk to us, and I want to bring John to that. Hopefully, so John, I'll keep talking to you. I'd love to get you to be a part of that as well. So thanks for being here. Any other thoughts from you, John, or questions from anyone else before we wrap up today?
Yeah, just a piece of advice I always give is like, at some point, like I said, the podcasts, the books are great, but at some point you just got to do the work. You just got to dive into what you're trying to do. That's where you're going to learn all the lessons, right? Like, just do it. Be scared, be vulnerable, be real. Just do what you really wanted to do. Just start doing the work. Even the work I laid out, also the work of what your dreams are, your goals, your vision, and just stop with the analysis paralysis, the indecisiveness, the whatever that's in the way. Just do, But yeah, if you guys want more guidance and mentorship, those websites that I laid out, optimizemymind.com has the free training. Optimizeyourmind.co is my website. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're having a project or something, but yeah, just go forth, guys. I mean, everything I gave today was from the heart and real, and the biggest changes I've ever seen in my life came from that work. Don't fixate on the blueberries, fixate on the big things that, like, really, a lot of us know what those big things are. We're just avoiding them, but stop avoiding the stuff. Let's face things head on and integrate into a better human being, a superhuman. Okay.
Well, I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, John, especially for being here, sharing your wisdom. I know I learned some things. I'm sure everyone else did too. So
thank you all.
Yeah, let's do this more.
The Superhuman Academy podcast is hosted by Colin Jewett and designed and edited by Army Cinco, with original music by Joshua Schunig and voiceovers by Corey Page Schunig. That's me. You can find past episodes and resources, as well as access to the ever-growing Superhuman Academy community at superhumanacademy.com. If you like the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice.